to give a big thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you guys for all your support. You guys keep me going. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing if you like this video series. It really helps the channel grow. It helps others find the channel. And of course, it helps me keep going. As I see the channel growing, it makes me want to make more videos like it. So, welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I am your Innkeeper, and today we'll be discussing the subclasses for Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Today's video in this series is going to focus on the Druid subclasses. This video series is not a in-depth analysis of each subclass. It's just my first impressions based on what I've read within the subclass and my initial first impressions on whether certain abilities are mechanically efficient or ones that I think are a little bit subpar mechanically. So let's go ahead and get started with the Circle of Spores Druid. So you get bonus spells when you pick the subclass. Most of them have to do with debuffing, poison, and disease. The standouts are blindness and deafness, animate dead, and cloud kill. You also get Chill Touch as a cantrip, which is fantastic because not only is it a great damaging cantrip with a nice effect where it prevents creatures from healing or regenerating hit points, but also druids don't have a whole lot of ways to deal damage from a range other than casting leveled spells. So it's nice to get a cantrip that's a consistent damage and it also has a very nice secondary effect. At second level, you get the Halo of Spores feature. Whenever a creature starts its turn or moves within 10 feet of you, you can use your reaction and deal it necrotic damage. The damage isn't much, it's 1d4 at low levels, and then it scales up as you get to certain levels. The ability had a lot of potential, but it's just so disappointing. Not only is it a low amount of damage, but it doesn't have a secondary effect, and yet it still grants the target a Constitution saving throw. And if they succeed, they don't take any damage. Not just that, but you can only use it once per round, and it uses your reaction. So I just don't understand why they decided to do it this way. It's a little bit baffling to me, and it's and then of course, you know, the damage is just not significant enough to spend additional time within a round to have a creature take a saving throw. You know, if they fail and you roll 1, they're going to take 1 point of damage. So you spent all that time having your DM look up the saving throw bonus and roll the die and all this stuff just so you can deal 1 point of damage or 2 points of damage to a creature. It just doesn't make any sense to me. At second level, you also get an ability called Symbiotic Entity. You can use an action and use up a wild shape use, and then you get basically these spores that come out all around you. You get 4 hit points per druid level, and then your spores damage goes up by an extra die. And then when you attack with a weapon, you deal an extra d6 damage. Again, it's an ability with a lot of potential. It's just too bad that the extra damage goes away once your temporary hit points goes away. It's not a whole lot of hit points that you get, and you don't have really good armor class proficiencies or armor proficiencies. So you're going to be getting hit. And even though 4 hit points per level is a decent amount, you'll see those hit points decrease very, very quickly. And as soon as those extra hit points are gone, so are these extra damage abilities. And then you're stuck in front of an enemy. And what do you have as far as damage dealing? Your basic druid stuff and then a reaction ability that deals an extra d4 points of damage. I don't think that justifies you going toe-to-toe with an orc chieftain. And honestly, I don't understand why they made it like this. So far, from what I've seen here, the abilities feel like the designers intended the Spores Druid to be a melee-type druid. But unfortunately, a lot of them depend on you retaining these temporary hit points. The thing is, they didn't give you any ways to boost your armor class and not get hit. So you will lose these hit points within a round or two. You will. It's just the way that it works in Dungeons & Dragons. So therefore, these abilities that help you be a more efficient melee combatant are going to be gone along with those hit points. And then you're stuck, right? Alright, so at 6th level, you get the feature called Fungal Infestation. Now, this one's really cool. When a creature dies within 10 feet, you can use a reaction and animate it as a zombie with 1 hit point. It has the zombie stats, it has that undead resilience, and you can use this several times per day, which is really cool. And Yeah, something has to die nearby for you to be able to use this ability, but generally you should be able to trigger this pretty consistently, and it's really got a lot of potential. That zombie can take an extra hit. It can deal an extra several points of damage. It can do utility stuff for you, like going into a room and seeing if it's trapped or if there's other creatures in there. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this zombie. At 10th level, you get the ability called Spreading Spores. As a bonus action, you can throw your spores 30 feet away, and then they infect a cube of 10 feet. And then any creature that goes in that cube basically has to make a saving throw or take your Halo of Spores damage. So this one can be handy, but situationally. So you're not going to find yourself using this ability very often. The limitation of not being able to use your reaction from the Halo of Spores in order to use this makes this a pretty big drawback to use, and the damage is just not that impactful. And then your capstone is called Fungal Body. You can't be blinded, deafened, frightened, or poisoned, and then any critical hit against you counts as a normal hit unless you're incapacitated. So this one's pretty good. At higher levels, condition effects see more play, so you will be saving against a lot of things that create a lot of these conditions, like blindness, deafness, poison, that kind of stuff. So it's nice to just be outright immune to those kind of things. That'll slow you down. So I think this one's really good. It's just too bad that it's your capstone and you get it so late in the game. So overall, the Spores Druid comes in as a pretty big disappointment in terms of optimization potential. I think you're going to get more out of this subclass if you multi-class along with it. Flavor-wise, though, I think that the Spores Druid is one of my favorite druids. The abilities are really thematic. The names of them, the way that they work, how they're described, it really invokes something really different from the druid class, but it also feels like a nature person. So they did a really good job with this one in terms of theme and flavor. It's just too bad that mechanically a lot of the abilities are subpar. And that can lead to a lot of disappointing play experiences, to be honest. So the Spores Druid can be good. So don't get me wrong. It seems like if you do some planning ahead, or if you multi-class and make use of a lot of these abilities in combination with other classes' abilities, then this one can be pretty good. But you shouldn't have to multi-class in order to make a subclass a good subclass. So it seems to me like the fact that it's a good dip means that it's just not a good subclass that can stand on its own. All right, and next up is the Circle of Stars. So your first ability gained at second level is called Star Map. This one is like a new spellcasting focus that you can get, and it resembles some astronomical instrument of some sort. So with this one, you get to use the Guidance cantrip for free, and everybody knows how good Guidance is, so getting it for free is really good, and I don't think I need to explain this one any further. You also get to cast Guiding Bolt without using a spell slot, and you get Guiding Bolt as part of your spell list, so you can use it, cast it using a spell slot if you want to, but you get a free use of it several times per day without having to use a spell slot. I think Guiding Bolt is a great spell, and I think that the secondary effect of granting the next attack against the creature advantage, plus it deals a good damage and a good type of damage, is fantastic. Druids already don't have great ways to deal a lot of ranged attack damage, so it's nice that you get to cast this great spell several more times than just your spell slots allow. And, you can also use your spell slots to cast it, so that's really good. Anyways, at second level, you also get the ability called Starry Form. So just like the Spores Druid, this one gives you an additional use for your Wild Shape feature. So instead of Wild Shaping, you can get this Starry Form where you kind of get like these constellations on you. One thing that I do want to say about this is I love that they're starting to add more uses for your Wild Shape beyond just turning into different types of animals. I think it's fantastic when you expand a subclass in this way and give it additional uses for existing abilities or existing resources that don't feel wasteful and they don't feel like you're missing out on something, but instead you have an option and a choice. You can turn into a bear or you can turn into the Starry Form. So I really like that. Anyway, so when you use this ability, you illuminate a 10-foot radius in bright light and then another 10-foot in dim light. And then you can pick from several forms that you can turn into. So let's go ahead and talk about these. So if you turn into the Archer, you get this bonus action ranged attack that deals radiant damage. We already talked earlier, ranged attacks are very rare in Druid, so it's great that you get that. It's awesome that it's a bonus action, and it's even better that it's radiant damage. In my opinion, the best damage type in the game. And I know some people say Force is. Personally, I think Radiant is, and if you want to hear my opinions as to why, I do have a series on the Wizard spell optimization where I discuss damage types and each one and why I think one is better than another. So if you are interested in hearing more about that, go ahead and check it out. I'm going to put it in the comments or one of the little thingy links that pops up on the top. Anyways, that's a good one. So the next shape that you can turn into is Chalice. So this one, when you cast a healing spell, you and another creature that's nearby also regain hit points. So this one is extremely situational. I don't like this one at all. I think it's the worst one. The Druid's subclass, or the Druid class, doesn't have a whole lot of great healing spells. Cure Wounds is maybe the only one that you're going to be able to use, and you're going to have to move up to someone to use it. It's very situational that this ability is going to kick in. Goodberry, if you're thinking Goodberry is a great Druid healing spell, it is, but this ability only happens when you cast a healing spell. So therefore, Goodberry doesn't qualify for this benefit of the Chalice. So unfortunately, it's not the best of the Starry forms. In fact, it's the worst one. Then there's the Dragon form. So you can't roll lower than a 10 on intelligence or wisdom ability checks, which is fantastic. But even better, your concentration saving throws can't be lower than a 10. So if you roll a 4, it becomes a 10. If you roll a 9, it becomes a 10 automatically. And then you add your bonuses to that. So it's very hard for you to lose concentration on spells, which is amazing. And I think the Dragon is probably the best one of the 3 forms that you can pick from. At level 6, you get the Cosmic Omen feature. So after you finish a long rest, you roll a die, and then whether the die lands on even or odd, one of 2 things happens where you get this special ability that you can use as a reaction. If you roll even, it's called Wheel. Whenever a creature within 30 feet of you is about to make an attack roll or saving throw or an ability check, you can have them roll a d6 and add it to the roll. Kind of like Bardic Inspiration in a way, but you use it as a reaction, which is awesome. If you roll odd, then that would be woe. You do the same thing, but for enemies, and instead of adding a d6, you subtract a d6. So you can subtract it from an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw. So clearly, both of these abilities are great, but the woe, if you roll the odd numbers, is the best one. Most buff spells have no requirement beyond the range and concentration, but most debuff spells, the creatures that you're trying to affect usually get a saving throw. And it's very rare that you're able to affect a creature without them being able to defend against it in some way, either you rolling an attack roll or them rolling a saving throw. So being able to reduce from their die roll automatically is really, really strong. I really like this ability a lot. It's fantastic. And I recommend that you take advantage of this as much as you can. So not only can you help make sure that certain debuff spells land or certain spells against creatures land by reducing their saving throw, but you can use this because initiative is an ability check. You can make it so that your enemies probably lose initiative or end up going lower on the initiative order, which is fantastic as it is. So definitely take full advantage of this ability because it is super, super good. At 10th level, you get an ability called Twinkling Constellations. So the D8 that you roll for the Archer and the Chalice, you add an extra D8 to that. And then for the Dragon, while that's active, you gain a flying speed, which is a hover speed of 20 feet, which is awesome. I mean, clearly this makes the Archer and the Dragon even better, even more so than the Chalice. And flying speed, as we all know, is fantastic to have no matter what. A hover speed is even better because you don't fall. Like if you're knocked prone, you don't take damage by impacting against the ground. So that's even better. And it's not concentration, which is even better. So, what you think that's already good, but then on top of that, you get to change your form whenever you want every round. So like if you did your form of the Dragon and then you want to turn into Archer, you don't have to use another wild shape in order to do so. You can do so the following round without spending an additional wild shape, which is fantastic. So I really, really like the ability so far. And then you get your capstone, which is called Full of Stars. You get resistance to piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing damage. Yeah, it's nice to get resistance, but at this level, generally, you're going to be encountering things that the most fearful thing from them is not their piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing damage. It is their debuffs and condition effects that they cause, spells, that kind of stuff. So getting resistance to these damage types is no big deal. But as I always say, this is your capstone. You're probably never going to see it because most adventuring groups don't go this high in level anyways. So the Circle of Stars ends up being a really, really great subclass. Every ability works well within the subclass package and synergizes well within the other abilities within the subclass. So I really, really like this one as far as mechanics. Flavor-wise, I don't get it. You're some kind of astronomer or something. It just doesn't seem to fit with the druidic nature for me. You turning into a bunch of stars it doesn't gel for me either. So it might for you, and that's cool, but it doesn't for me. But if you're just going strictly on mechanics, fantastic subclass. And then finally, we get the Circle of Wildfire. Not surprisingly, the spells that this subclass gets as a bonus all have to do with either fire or rebirth. Who would have guessed that one? At second level, you get to summon a Wildfire Spirit if you use like one of your wild shapes, which is awesome because, again, another great, interesting, different use for your wild shape feature. Instead of you turning into something, you can summon something, and this time it's a kind of like a phoenix type spirit. So anyone within 10 feet of the spirit takes fire damage. It sucks that it's just anyone and not just your enemies. So you have to be strategic with where you place it when you first summon it, because you could potentially hurt your friends or yourself, so you don't want to do that. The stats for the spirit are really good, and then it has a range attack and a teleportation ability, which makes it a really, really good ally in combat and in utility. So really awesome ability. Then at 6th level, you get the enhanced body ability. So while you have your spirit in play, you can add a D8 to your rolls for like healing spells or spells that deal fire damage. You also can cast spells that don't have a range of self as if you were in the location of this spirit, which is awesome. This kind of reminds me, and we're going to talk about the Scribe's Wizard, kind of reminds me of the Scribe's Wizard ability, where you can cast spells originating from a different place than where you're at, which is really awesome tactically because it keeps you safe and you still have the ability to extend the range of your spells and that kind of stuff. So we'll get more into that when we talk about wizards. At 10th level, you get the Cauterizing Flames ability. I love the name of this one. That's pretty funny. When a creature dies near you or near your spirit, you can make it so that spot where the creature died either hurts the next person that walks in or heals the next person that walks in. You have to use your reaction in order for that to work. I think the heal is a little bit easier to pull off than the damage, since a creature has to enter the space in order for that to take effect. But it's still nice to have the option in case you need it in your back pocket. Druids also don't have a lot of options for their reaction. So it's nice to see that some of these subclasses like this one, the Stars and the Spores, all have great uses as a reaction ability, which is nice to see because maximizing your action economy is what optimization is all about. So I'm glad that they're throwing a bone to optimizers by adding these reaction abilities to these subclasses. And then finally, your capstone is called Blazing Revival, and you get it at 14th level. So if you die, you instead can kill off your spirit, and then you revive again with half your hit points, half your maximum hit points restored. Really cool, very thematic. Makes me definitely think of a phoenix rising from the ashes. I love it. I love the ability. It's decently powerful. It gives you basically an extra life if you're ever killed, make some big mistake in combat that gets you killed. Well, now you got a second chance and you can come back. I love it. You can only use it once per rest. Even though you can summon the spirit more than once per rest, you can use the revive ability only once per rest. So keeps it balanced. I like it. Overall, really good. So to summarize, the Circle of Spores is a deeply thematic subclass with a couple of good abilities, but a bunch of abilities that just seems incongruent with the playstyle that the subclass wants to nudge you towards. There are ways to optimize this by multi-classing or planning very, very ahead and very detailed, specific selections as you level up. But other than that, the average person that uses this subclass is going to feel a little bit less than the rest of the group, I think. The Circle of Stars is the opposite. So this one has a great set of abilities that synergize well, but the theme of the subclass, it just doesn't call out to me. Maybe, again, for you might be different, but if mechanics is all you're after, then this is probably the best option of the 3 new subclasses. And then finally, the Circle of Wildfire. This one has a good balance between healing and damage, and the creature that you can summon is really, really good, has some really cool abilities and great range attack. Druids already can summon better than any class, and adding an additional creature to the team should not be underestimated as far as how much it can add to the power level of your team, including adding additional action economy, additional hit point soak, basically, and just additional tactical benefits. So you can summon this creature and you can cast a summoning spell and concentrate on that. So you'll actually be able to have more things along with you to help you in combat and utility and other things. All right, so now I'm going to rank these subclasses as I see them. A quick note on my rankings: when I rank a subclass within these first impression reviews, I rank them only within their respective class. So if I say a subclass is top tier, it doesn't mean it's top tier versus all classes in the game. It just means it's the top tier subclass within this class. Clearly, if you want to play a monk, let's say, you're going to choose a monk no matter what. Now, it's which of this monk subclasses I figure is going to be your best selection for optimization versus your worst selection for optimization. So that's what these rankings are based on. Now, my rankings for the Druid subclasses in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. In the bottom tier, we have the Circle of Spores. Not surprising. For mid tier, I don't have any subclasses in here. And for top tier, I have the Circle of Stars and the Circle of Wildfire both. I think the Circle of Stars is a little bit better mechanically than the Circle of Wildfire, but they fill different roles within the group, so I think both are actually really great choices. And that's it for my first impressions of the Druid subclasses in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. If you liked the video, please go ahead and click that like button. It really helps the channel out. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there in the comments down below. And this is your Innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then.